In Sri Lanka, almost every young person has a set list of priorities. So it's almost the same for everyone. I mean, soon after they're out of their higher studies or their education, they want to have a grand wedding. That is the first thing they want. They don't mind even to get a bank loan to get it done. And then to buy a vehicle somehow. So they will do it on lease or whatever the measures that are available, have a vehicle, and then build a house. Again, it's doing it on debt. Thing is, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with these aspirations. It's not the case. It's okay to have such dreams. But the thing is, almost everyone thinks this is the only way forward. There's no other option. Must have their own list of priorities, and then without getting caught up in that wheel. That's what I'm saying. Create your own path in life. Just understand the fact that every human being is unique. Every human being has unique needs.
Hamster wheel. I think the issue is that in Sri Lanka, people keep talking about progress, and yet this is a country that really wallows and basks in regression as well as stagnancy. And I mean that in terms of how people think, their mindsets, their attitudes, their perceptions.
I mean, we are definitely in one of those, cycles, right? Endless kind of cycles. It's very true. From what I see, the hamster wheel to be, in our case, would be, I guess, obviously a good education. Then we want a good job. Then we want to have a good marriage, and then have children eventually, I guess. And no one really stops to question why are we doing these things. I guess it's all predetermined for us.
In Sri Lanka, almost every young person has a set list of priorities. So it's almost the same for everyone. I mean, soon after they're out of their higher studies or their education, they want to have a grand wedding. That is the first thing they want. They don't mind even to get a bank loan to get it done. And then to buy a vehicle somehow. So they will do it on lease or whatever the measures that are available, have a vehicle, and then build a house. Again, it's doing it on debt. Thing is, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with these aspirations. It's not the case. It's okay to have such dreams. But the thing is, almost everyone thinks this is the only way forward. There's no other option. So this is why it's very important for people to figure out what they really want in life without getting caught up in that cycle, without getting caught up in that hamster wheel, and figure out, okay, what are my list of priorities and what do I really want to do in life? So if you don't want to have a grand wedding, or if you don't want to get married, that's perfectly all right. Must have their own list of priorities, and then without getting caught up in that wheel. That's what I'm saying. I think it is there in every part of the world, more or less, but in a country like Sri Lanka, where the options are really limited for people, this makes a bigger impact. So in other countries, there are various paths for people. There are so many routes that you can take. So there's a little bit of space for them. But in Sri Lanka, because of the nature, because the way our society is structured, where our thinking pattern is structured, where our options are structured, this makes a bigger impact on people. I think fundamentally there's a human inclination to follow, right? No one wants to initiate. People love to be in their comfort zones. People love to do what the others are doing, whether it's right or wrong. If the majority is doing something, you are more inclined to do that.
Hamster wheel. I think the issue is that in Sri Lanka, people keep talking about progress, and yet this is a country that really wallows and basks in regression as well as stagnancy. And I mean that in terms of how people think, their mindsets, their attitudes, their perceptions. On one hand, I find that Sri Lankans are very infatuated and obsessed with status symbols. We use culture for every excuse and reason and justification when it's convenient for us. And yet we follow these very, very conventional, linear patterns and formulas of doing things. And this, I feel, is something that bleeds across the board. So while worshipping and adhering to certain routines and linear patterns and formulas is bad, I do believe on one hand that having a sense of routine is good to achieve and fulfill your objectives and tasks, whether they be short-term goals, mid-term or long-term goals. So routine also helps us have a sense of discipline, a sense of value and a sense of focus. But I think the key word here is equilibrium. So balance is important.
I mean, we are definitely in one of those, cycles, right? Endless kind of cycles. It's very true. From what I see, the hamster wheel to be, in our case, would be, I guess, obviously a good education. Then we want a good job. Then we want to have a good marriage, and then have children eventually, I guess. And no one really stops to question why are we doing these things. I guess it's all predetermined for us.
Create your own path in life. Just understand the fact that every human being is unique. Every human being has unique needs. Because when we live, we wear different masks, right? For instance, when you're with your family, you wear a certain mask. When you're with your friends, you wear a different mask. And when you're at office with your colleagues, you wear another mask. So, and when you are with yourself also, it's a mask that you wear. I mean, it's not your real self, because based on what you do, you create an identity for yourself, and that's the mask you wear when you are with yourself also. So a lot of people, live their entire lives without finding who they actually are, or without really trying to find an answer to that fundamental question. That is why someone should rethink this hamster wheel that we are talking about, the cycle they are caught up in. And then it's like an exercise. If you break that chain, if you break away from that cycle, you come to the realization that every single human being is unique. And then it's a very important step in finding your real self, finding your true self. Human being who can think has this sense of emptiness within them. That there's a vacuum that you're trying to fill. So to fill that vacuum, to fill that emptiness, you do various things in life. During your school days, you think when you pass your A-levels, you repass your O-levels, you'll be happy. But when you do your O-levels, you think, okay, you see another target, which is your A-levels. And then your parents, your teachers say, okay, once you're done with your A-levels, you can do whatever you want with your life. But the moment you're done with your A-levels, there's a university or higher education, or you have to find a job. And then when you are doing a job, you think, okay, if I get to that position, I'll be fine. But every time you go, okay, you set a target for yourself, and every time you reach that target, you think and you find something else. You think, okay, as long as you have a target, you think once you reach that, you will find your happiness. But when you get there, happiness goes elsewhere. Right? You see happiness in a different place. What I do is I stay away from the special things that the other people do. Because a lot of people think, this is a different way to look at things, or different way to lead your life. But when you really get to the bottom of it, I think this is what every human being must do. Because first understand that you have your own needs, you have your own priorities, that you shouldn't blindly follow someone else unless it makes absolute sense to you.
Does a person define what success is? Or does success define an individual or a person, be it professionally, personally, socially? Now, what is success? Across the board, there are people who will tell you success is money and wealth. There are people who will tell you success is status, designation, capacity. There are people who will tell you that success is renown and respect and regard. Then there are people who will tell you success is influence and power. Philosophy is something that I really turn to and look to, and it's really helped me in my life. And this is something that I have also adopted in my life, where success is not about the outcome, but success is about the process. So, because the outcome we can't handle, right? The consequences and the repercussions we can only own and we can only face. Some circumstances in our life also we have no control over. But what we do have control over is the process. How we build ourselves, how we use the tools and the gifts that we have been given, how we choose to make use of the time that we have. Time, I think, is the greatest scarcity. Therefore, I feel that figuring out how to do meaningful things with the time that we have is important. Figuring out how to do meaningful things with the lives that we have, I think, is important, because there's a correlation between time and our life. I've not always been like this. I can be very candid and honest that the 20s of my life flashed before my eyes. I don't have too many regrets in life. But there's a lot of stuff that I missed out in my 20s because I lived life really fast and really lecherously sometimes. And I was also inebriated a great deal. So I needed to get perspective in life. And for that to happen, that happened because I suffered a lot of personal loss in my life. Lost both parents. In my life, I've lost my home when I was 20 years old. I was pretty much on the street. And then I had to kind of fend for myself and Tenny, and we had to figure out what we're going to do with our lives. So when you go through like huge life calamities and life events like that, you start to kind of, on one hand, you become more resilient and you develop resolve. But sometimes you can also pick up bad habits and you become a little bit reckless. But to me, I would say that in the last 3 or 4 years, I decided to change things around. I decided to get fitter, to get healthier. I decided to focus a little bit more on healthy aspects of life in order to have more clarity. Remember, small steps eventually lead to greater strides.
I honestly can't say that I've broken out of the hamster wheel either, because, well, I'm also an attorney and I feel like I'm also ticking the boxes as I go along, and I'm quite young generally, so I don't know if I figured it out, but I like to think that because of these conversations and because of the awareness that is being created right now amongst, I don't know, our generation perhaps, but I think I'm trying to think for myself. I think I try my best to think, why am I making these decisions? Actually, I wanted to mention, because recently, my age, as is in this age group, lots of people are like, getting married and that kind of stuff. And I've asked some of my friends, why are you doing it? Like, what is the reason? Just, and honestly, like after the fact is when they think why. And I think there's an issue there, right? If you don't know why you're doing something, you're just kind of just going with the flow. So I guess there is a problem, and people are trying to break out of it these days, but more can be done, I guess. In the middle of it, right, we're so immersed in this, this whole like ticking boxes and like our predetermined destiny or whatever it is. We're so in the middle of it, right? So we don't even know that we're doing it, that we're just kind of following along with the motions. So I feel like right now, because I do feel like I was just ticking boxes, and I've also created some kind of meaning for the things that I'm doing. I feel like, okay, I'm an attorney, and I feel like I found meaning there, and that's what I think. But I don't know if it's the actual truth, or whether the society and like where I live and like my surroundings have made me think that way. I don't know if it's the actual truth, but at the very least, I like to think that even though I am ticking the boxes, and despite that, I feel like I found meaning in the decisions I've made. I think I've tried to deviate to an extent. I've tried to find interests that are beyond what is expected of me, I think. So I see that happening quite broadly as well. Don't forget to check us out on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.